You want to know what it does to her, this waiting, this watching, this hoping? When you don't text first, when you don't reach out, when your silence becomes your message, it breaks something. Slowly, quietly, invisibly. Like water on a stone, your inaction wears down her belief that she matters, not just to the world, but to you. You see, friends, God created man to pursue, to initiate, not because she can't, but because love ought to lead. When you wait for her to always reach out first, to always be the one to check in, to care, to ask, then you're asking her to carry the weight of your bond alone. That's not love. That's laziness disguised as casual affection. And hear me when I say this. She starts to feel like a burden instead of a blessing. She wonders if she's a convenience, not a commitment. She questions her worth, not because she's insecure, but because your silence is louder than your presence ever was. Young man, husband, boyfriend, whoever you are, listen to me now. If you won't make her feel chosen, don't be surprised when she stops choosing you. Don't be shocked when she turns silent too, not out of spite, but out of survival. So I plead with you, text first, call first, care first, show her what she means. Don't wait for the moment you lose her to realize she was longing for you. To simply show up. If this message stirs your heart, then stay with me. Because before this is over, I want to walk you through not just why she feels forgotten, but how you can bring life back into what you've been letting die. Silence is not neutral. It's not harmless. It's not some empty space between words that can be ignored or brushed off like it means nothing. Silence, especially when it comes from someone you care about, someone you've opened your heart to, carries a weight that words sometimes cannot reach. When you don't text her first, it may feel like a small thing to you, a forgotten task, an innocent delay, a passive choice. But to her, it is a loud declaration, a message that says, "You're not on my mind. You're not worth the effort. You're not priority." And that message, repeated over time, becomes a story she begins to believe. You see, communication is not just about information, it's about intention. When a woman waits for you to reach out, to ask how her day was, to check in, to simply say, "I'm thinking of you," and nothing comes, her heart begins to interpret that stillness. She doesn't want you to flood her inbox with empty words. She wants one message with real care behind it. But when that care is absent, when the days roll by and the silence grows longer, it creates a void. And into that void pour questions, doubts, insecurities, some of which she thought she had already buried. The world tells us not to overthink, not to read too much into things. But let me ask you this. If she means something to you, wouldn't you want to remove every doubt? Wouldn't you want to make sure she never has to question whether you care? Your silence speaks, whether you mean it to or not. It says, "I'm not thinking of you enough to act." And she hears it loud and clear. Not once, not twice. But every time she checks her phone and sees no new message from you, she might not say anything at first. She might excuse it, tell herself you're busy, convince herself not to be too much. But over time, that silence begins to change how she shows up. Where once she would send long, warm texts full of hope and energy, she now responds with brief answers. Where she once lit up at your name, now she's guarded, hesitant, unsure. And it didn't happen because of a fight or a betrayal. It happened because of neglect. Because the absence of your effort chipped away at the foundation of what she thought was real. Love doesn't always fall apart in loud explosions. Sometimes it dies in the quiet moments you thought didn't matter. In the mornings you didn't say good morning. In the nights you didn't check in. In the days you didn't text first. Not because you couldn't, but because you wouldn't. You didn't think it mattered, but it did. And she felt every second of it. There is a lie many have come to believe, that love is a feeling soft and poetic, something you carry inside your chest and nothing more. That as long as your heart feels it, that's enough. But I tell you, that's not love. Not the kind that builds a life. Not the kind that heals wounds and holds someone through a storm. Real love is not just something you feel. It's something you do. It's not measured by how warm your thoughts are, but by how intentionally you show up. When you don't text her first, when you wait until she reaches out, again, you're living in the illusion that love can survive on what you feel in your heart without expression. But unexpressed love feels the same as indifference to the person waiting on the other end. She doesn't live in your head. She can't hear your thoughts. She only knows what you show. And when all she sees is silence, she starts to wonder if you care at all. It doesn't take grand gestures. It doesn't take paragraphs of poetry or dramatic declarations every day. Sometimes, love is a 2-second text that says, "Hey, I'm thinking of you." Sometimes it's being the one who reaches out first. Not because you had to, not because she reminded you, but because something in your spirit moved you to act. That kind of love is felt deep. It says you matter enough for me to stop and let you know. That's what she longs for, not perfection but presence. There's a deeper truth here. Love in its truest form is sacrificial. It gives, it moves, it acts, even when it's tired, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's not about getting something in return. When you hold back affection, when you pull back your effort, whether it's from pride, laziness, or indifference, what you're really saying is, I want to receive love, but I don't want to do the work of giving it. And that kind of love, it's hollow. It doesn't last. She doesn't want to be the only one trying. She doesn't want to always be the one initiating, always the one bridging the gap. Because when that happens, she's not just feeling neglected, she's carrying a relationship on her own. And love was never meant to be one-sided. It was never meant to be something she had to earn every day through patience and silence and hope that maybe, just maybe, you'd remember her long enough to text back. Love is pursuit. Love is effort. Love is action. If she's constantly the one reaching out, eventually she'll stop. Not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. She'll stop because she finally believes the painful thought she's been trying to silence. That maybe, just maybe, you don't love her the way she loves you. And it wasn't because you said it, it was because you didn't. Neglect doesn't always come with cruel words or open hostility. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it hides in the spaces where love used to live. In the silence, in the absence, in the unspoken. And when you don't text her first, when day after day passes and you leave her waiting for a sign that she still matters to you, that silence begins to feel like rejection. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that leaves her wondering if she still wanted it all. You may not mean to hurt her. You may think, I'm just giving her space, or I'm not really a texting person, or even, she knows how I feel. But understand this. To her, your neglect doesn't feel like space, it doesn't feel like peace, it feels like being pushed away without explanation. And when someone who loves deeply starts to feel like a bother, like a backup plan, like a chore, you've already started losing her heart. Every time you choose not to reach out first, she notices. She may not say it. She may not want to seem needy. But don't mistake her silence for strength. She feels it, and it chips away at her confidence in the relationship, in herself, and in you. You might think it's no big deal to skip a day or 2 or 3, but while you're going about your day, she's carrying questions that weigh more than you realize. Did I do something wrong? Has he lost interest? Why do I always have to initiate? Am I the only one who cares this much? These questions grow louder with every unanswered silence. With every moment you scroll past her contact and choose not to type even a single word. And what began as a minor concern turns into a quiet heartbreak. Because the truth is, she doesn't just want your attention. She wants to feel chosen. She wants to feel like she crosses your mind without needing to remind you that she exists. Neglect might not seem like cruelty to you, but to her, it starts to feel like abandonment. Like rejection with a smile. Like being slowly erased from someone's daily life without a word of explanation. And over time, this feeling doesn't just hurt her, it changes her. She stops reaching out, stops trying. Not because she stopped loving you, but because she finally believes you don't love her the same. Because love that doesn't act like love slowly begins to look like rejection. And what's most tragic is that in many cases it wasn't hate that broke her. It was indifference. A cold, passive silence from someone who once promised warmth. And while you may not see it as a big deal, the distance you created with your lack of effort left her with a wound she couldn't explain, and a message she couldn't ignore. There is something sacred about the way a woman's heart is designed. From the beginning of time, from the very breath of Eden, she was never meant to chase after love. She was meant to be pursued by it, to be sought after, cherished, and chosen with consistency. She was not created to beg for attention, to constantly wonder if she matters, or to carry the burden of initiating every connection. And yet, when you refuse to text her first, when you leave her to always take the first step, that's exactly what you ask her to do. To beg, to question, to carry a weight that was never hers. She may be strong, she may be independent, but that doesn't mean she was made to do this alone. Yes, she's capable of texting first, and often she does. But when that effort is never returned, when the pattern becomes one-sided, something inside her begins to ache. Because deep down, she knows what she was made for. She knows love isn't meant to be earned by silence or proven through waiting. She knows that when a man truly cares, he shows it. Not once, not occasionally, but with consistent pursuit. And make no mistake, pursuit isn't just flowers and dates. Pursuit is presence. It's waking up and choosing her again. It's reaching out when you don't feel like it. It's letting her know that she's on your mind without her having to ask for it. When you don't text first, when you always wait for her to move toward you, she starts to feel like a burden, not a blessing. She starts to feel like maybe the attention she craves is too much, when in reality, it's exactly what love is supposed to offer. We live in a time where chasing someone can feel like weakness, where showing too much care is mocked, and where effort is seen as optional. But the truth cuts deeper than culture. When you love someone, you don't wait until it's convenient to show it. You move. You reach out. You pursue. Not because she can't live without you, but because you don't want her to feel like she has to. When you don't text her first, it's not just about a message. It's about the message behind the message. It says, "You matter, but only if you remind me to show it." That's not love. That's emotional minimalism. And over time, it breaks something in her. Because the woman who was made to be treasured begins to feel like she's just tolerated. And when she starts to feel that way, when the pursuit dies and she finds herself always doing the reaching, she doesn't just feel tired. She feels alone. And it's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being without someone. It comes from being with someone who no longer moves toward her. There are certain things a relationship simply cannot survive without, and communication is one of them. It's not just a nice gesture. It's not a bonus. It's not something reserved for moments of crisis or obligation. Communication is the very oxygen of connection. Without it, love suffocates slowly. Without it, intimacy fades. Without it, the closeness that once felt natural becomes foreign and forced. And when you don't text her first, when you leave that silence hanging day after day, you begin to starve the very relationship you claim to care about. A message might seem small. A few words might seem insignificant. But to her, they are breath. They are signs of life. They are reminders that she is still seen, still wanted, still worth the effort. And when that breath stops, when the communication dries up, she starts to wonder if the connection is dying. Or worse, already dead. She doesn't need you to flood her phone with paragraphs. She doesn't need you to be a poet. But she needs to feel you're present, that you're thinking of her without needing to be prompted, that your heart still leans in, even when life gets busy. Because communication is not just about exchanging information, it's about reinforcing commitment. It's about saying, "You still matter to me," even in the simplest ways. You might say, "I'm just not good at texting," or "I don't like small talk." But understand this. When you love someone, you don't only do what's comfortable. You do what's necessary. Not because it's easy, but because it keeps the bond alive. The same way the body cannot live without breath, a relationship cannot survive without regular, intentional connection. When she's the one who always texts first, always checks in, always asks how you're doing, she starts to feel like she's keeping the whole thing alive on her own. Like she's the only one breathing life into it while you're slowly slipping away. And that feeling doesn't just hurt. It creates a deep fracture in her heart. A fracture that no explanation can truly fix unless your actions begin to change. You don't have to say something profound. Sometimes, love is as simple as a few words that say, "I haven't forgotten you." But when even those words are missing, when you let hours or days pass without a thought reaching her phone, she feels the air leaving the room, and with it, her sense of security, of closeness, of connection. You don't need perfect words, you just need presence. Because presence is powerful. It says, "I'm here, I care, I'm still choosing you." And when you make the choice not to communicate, she hears that too. Not in words, but in the aching silence that always says more than you think. There's a timeless principle that governs not just the fields of the earth, but the fields of the heart. You reap what you sow. This isn't just a proverb or a spiritual concept. It's a truth that plays out every single day in relationships. What you invest is what grows. What you neglect is what dies. So when you don't text her first, when you choose silence over initiative, indifference over engagement, understand this: you are sowing something. And eventually, you will harvest the results of that choice. You can't plant absence and expect closeness. You can't plant inconsistency and expect trust. You can't plant silence and expect warmth. If the only time you reach out is when you feel like it, or when she initiates first, or when you're lonely or bored, then you're building a pattern that tells her she is only as valuable as your convenience. And when that becomes the rhythm of your relationship, you shouldn't be surprised when the connection begins to fade. Love is not a passive feeling, it's an active pursuit. It grows when you water it, it dies when you don't. So if you find her becoming colder if she stops texting you first, if her energy begins to shift, don't immediately assume she's the problem. Look at the seeds you've been sowing. Have you been consistent? Have you been intentional? Have you made her feel like she matters without needing to beg for the bare minimum? Relationships are built in small daily acts. They are strengthened, not by grand moments alone, but by simple, steady choices. And one of those choices is who reaches out first. When you make the effort to be the first to check in, to say good morning, to ask how she's doing, you're sowing reassurance. You're planting confidence. You're building a foundation where she knows she's seen, heard, and prioritized. But when that effort never comes from you, the seeds you're sowing are doubt, weariness, and insecurity. You might not see the impact immediately. You might think things are fine, but the harvest always comes weeks, months, even years later. And when it does, it shows up in the form of a woman who no longer feels emotionally safe. A woman who stops trying. A woman who, after waiting for you to move toward her, finally turns her heart away. And that kind of distance isn't sudden, it's cultivated by repeated neglect. So ask yourself honestly, what are you sowing? Are you giving her reasons to stay or forcing her to wonder if she's already been left behind? Are you planting intimacy or leaving behind empty soil and hoping something will grow anyway? Because the truth is, every choice you make in love has consequences. Every moment you stay silent when you should speak, every time you withhold when you should give. Those are seeds, and in time they bear fruit, for better or for worse. So now you've heard the silence through her heart. You've seen what's often hidden behind her smile. You've felt, perhaps for the first time, what it means when you don't reach out, when you let the little things slide thinking they don't matter. But they do. To her, they always have. Every message you didn't send was a message in itself. Every delay, every silence, every missed chance to simply say, "I see you, I'm here, I care," it carved something out of her spirit. This isn't just about phones. It's not about technology or habits. It's about love. It's about the sacred responsibility of presence. You can't claim to love her and consistently make her feel unseen. You can't hold her heart in your hands and treat it like an afterthought. If she matters to you, she deserves to know it. Not in theory, not in some buried feeling you never express, but in action, in pursuit, in intentional, loving effort. So let today be the turning point. Let it be the day you stop waiting for her to reach out first. Let it be the day you stop making her carry the weight of wondering. Love her like you mean it. Show up. Text first. Not because you have to, but because now you finally understand what it means when you don't. And to every man listening, hear this clearly. If she's still waiting, If she's still hoping, if she's still trying, she hasn't given up yet. But one day she will. And when she does, it won't be with anger. It will be with quiet heartbreak. Don't let your silence be the reason she stops believing in love.